Hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of MMA Vision Analysis. This one, I'm here to talk about Canelo, Alvarez, Terence, Crawford, possibly happening in Saudi Arabia. But before getting started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification to get all of this that is new from this channel, your channel, the one and only MMA Vision Analysis. From Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou, to Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. As of late, Saudi Arabia has been hosting some of the biggest boxing matches on the planet, if not simply the biggest, and I'm going to venture out and say the biggest boxing event in the world. The only anticlimactic thing about hosting an event in Saudi Arabia is the reaction of the fans. And this is not to disrespect the fans. This is just to call out the obvious, the thing that everybody can see. When you have a, let's say, UFC event in Las Vegas, the reactions of the crowds adds so much animation to the event. I believe that's one of the biggest things that is missing when events are hosted in places like the Middle East. This is not to say that this can't change, but as of now, that is a fact. But what helps these events happen in places like Saudi Arabia is the enormous amount of money being thrown at boxers, which incentivizes boxers and fighters of all kinds and promoters and organizations to host events in places in the Middle East, the likes of the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. This one here is a fight that boxing truly needs. When we think of boxing, we think of the politics that goes on in boxing, which prevents many big fights from happening, whether that's to the benefit of or detriment of boxing and boxers. My personal opinion, that was to the detriment of boxing. This is not to say that boxing's dead, but when you compare it to a sport like the UFC, then there is no comparison, in all honesty, because in places like the UFC, you're always going to see the two best guys, generally speaking, face each other off. There are politics that happen in the UFC, like who is the biggest draw, like for instance, the Conor McGregor, but that is very, very, very rare. Generally speaking, the two best guys are always going to face each other. That hasn't always been the fact or the case in boxing. Now, when you throw enormous amounts of money at boxers, then you can make these super fights happen. So now we have super fights happening, but they're not happening in places where I would say, quote unquote, the majority of boxing fans are, places like the States and certain parts of Europe. But it's happening in a place where the sport, let's say combat sports in general, it's a new wave, a new idea. But the money is helping to put these events together and put the biggest fighters together for the biggest fights there are. So there is a good and a bad side to it. Like I said, it's very anticlimactic to see the fans' reactions or lack thereof when it comes down to events that are hosted in places in the Middle East, the likes of the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we get to see awesome fights like this one here happen. Terence, Crawford, Canelo, Alvarez. I believe that this fight, if it was to happen, I'm not sure if it is official yet, this one here is one for the ages. And we might be looking at a fight that could extend perhaps a trilogy or even 4 fights. So this is very interesting to see. And like I said, money that is being thrown at fighters is what helps these kind of fights happen. I do understand it is a bit inconvenient for you as a bo- boxing lover to have to travel 6, 7, 8,000 miles away to witness this kind of fight. But you can always watch it on television. At the end of the day, there's enough money being thrown at these guys to make these super fights happen. So I'm all for fights happening, but I would love more fan reactions when these fights happen, because I believe that's what adds animation to the whole event, is the presence of the fans and their reactions. If you made it this far, I appreciate you for sticking around. Please let me know what you think in the comments and subscribe for more.